You know the feeling. The thing you wanted for months finally arrives. The new phone, the raise, the shoes, the yes. And for a few days, the world glows. You keep looking at it. You keep feeling it. Then, quietly, without any warning, it becomes normal. A week later, you barely notice it at all. Nothing went wrong. You got exactly what you asked for, but the glow faded, and somewhere underneath, a new want was already waking up. So this video is about that fading, why the finish line keeps moving, why we work so hard for things that stop mattering so fast, and why this is not a flaw in you, but an old design running exactly as it was built to run. So let's start with the most famous test of all. In 1978, 3 researchers named Philip Brickman, Dan Coates, and Ronnie Janoff-Bulman went looking for the happiest people they could find. They interviewed 22 people who had won the Illinois lottery, some of them up to $1 million. Then they compared those winners to 22 ordinary neighbors and to 29 people who had been paralyzed in accidents. If money and luck decide happiness, the winners should have been floating. But they were not. On a happiness scale from 0 to 5, the winners scored 4.00. The ordinary neighbors scored 3.82. Barely a gap. And here is the strange part. When asked how much they enjoyed simple daily things, coffee, a joke, a chat, the winners scored lower than the neighbors, 3.33 against 3.82. The jackpot had quietly dimmed the small pleasures of a normal day. Now, we should be careful here. This does not mean joy always dies in 2 weeks. Some winners were asked years later, not days. It does not mean money is useless. It means the mind adjusts. The extraordinary becomes the new ordinary, and the eye moves on. But why does this keep surprising us? Because we are terrible at guessing our own future feelings. In 1998, a Harvard researcher named Daniel Gilbert studied exactly this, what he called affective forecasting. In one test, he followed voters after a governor's election in Texas. The people whose side lost predicted how sad they would be a month later. They guessed 4.07 on his scale, real misery. So a month passed, and Gilbert asked them again. And the losers were not at 4.07, they were at 5.33, much happier than they had sworn they would be. Their imagined grief had forgotten all about tomorrow's breakfast, the sun on the drive to work, the friend who called. Life kept happening, and life kept pulling them back. That is the engine of the whole illusion. In the moment, one outcome feels like it will decide everything. It almost never does. And this pullback toward normal has a name, the hedonic treadmill. You move, but the ground moves under you, so you end up in the same place. In 2003, a researcher named Richard Lucas tracked this over 15 years, following more than 24,000 people in Germany through big life events, marriage, divorce, losing a partner. On average, people reacted hard, then drifted back toward where they started. But Lucas found something the simple story leaves out. The drift back was not the same for everyone. Some people never fully returned. Some changed for good. The treadmill is real, but it is not an iron law bolted to every life. Which matters, because it means your set point is not your destiny. So does anything last? Yes. And this is where we have to be honest. In 2020, researchers led by Eric Lindquist studied Swedish lottery winners 5 to 22 years after they won. A prize of $100,000 did raise how people judged their lives overall and raised their sense of financial calm even more. That lift did not fade over the years, but the effect on day-to-day mood, the actual feeling of a Tuesday afternoon, was small and unclear. And this lines up with the biggest happiness numbers we have. In 2010, Daniel Kahneman and Angus Deaton studied around 450,000 American answers. Money kept raising how people rated their life, but everyday emotions seemed to flatten out around $75,000 a year. Then in 2021, a researcher named Matthew Killingsworth gathered over 1.7 million real-time reports and found everyday feeling kept rising with income after all. So in 2023, they worked together to solve it. The flattening was mostly true for the least happy people. For most, more money still nudged the mood upward. Which means the honest lesson is not money can't buy happiness. It is quieter than that. Money can lift how you judge your life. It can buy calm, options, and less fear. But it is not a final destination where wanting stops. So if it is not the world outside that keeps resetting, we have to look inside the skull. Because the machine that chases rewards is not chasing happiness at all. In 1997, a researcher named Wolfram Schultz recorded single brain cells in monkeys, the cells that release dopamine. At first, when a monkey got a surprise drop of juice, the cells fired, a hit, a reward. But then he added a light that always came just before the juice. And something remarkable happened. After enough repeats, the dopamine cells stopped firing at the juice. They fired at the light instead, the signal that juice was coming. The reward itself went quiet. Between 55 and 80% of these cells followed this pattern. And when the light flashed but the juice never came, the signal dropped below normal, right at the moment the juice should have arrived. That drop is disappointment, written in a single cell. So your brain is not a happiness machine, it is a prediction machine. Dopamine is not the applause after the finish line, it is part of the system that keeps updating what the finish line even means. In 2001, a researcher named Brian Knutson watched this in humans with a brain scanner. He showed 8 volunteers cues promising money, up to $5. And the deep reward center lit up hardest, not when the money arrived, but while they waited for it. The chase itself was the thrill. But here is where the popular story goes too far. People love to say dopamine is only about wanting, never enjoying. That is not quite right. In 1998, a researcher named Kent Berridge stripped dopamine out of rats, in some cases up to 99%. If dopamine were pleasure itself, those rats should have felt nothing. Yet their faces still showed the same pleasure at sweet taste, the same disgust at bitter. Wanting collapsed. Liking survived. Dopamine drives the hunt, the pursuit, the learning. Pleasure runs on other wires. So put it together and a picture appears. You have a mind that predicts, then compares reality against the prediction, then updates and points at the next gap. It is built to notice what is missing, not to sit still in what it has. And there is one more tilt to it. In 2001, a researcher named Roy Baumeister gathered decades of studies under one line: bad is stronger than good. People recalled recent bad events far more than good ones, by roughly 4-1. A threat grabs the mind harder than a gift, which makes brutal sense when you remember where this mind was built. For most of human history, satisfaction was expensive. The ancestor who felt fully content, who stopped scanning, stopped storing food, stopped worrying about the group, did not do better. In a hard world, a little restlessness kept you alive. The one who always felt a small gap kept planting, kept moving, kept preparing for the winter that always came. But be careful with that idea. It does not mean nature designed you to suffer. It does not mean your restlessness is proof of some cruel plan. It means natural selection quietly favored minds that keep tracking gaps, risks, and chances. That tracking can feel like unrest. It kept your line alive for 100,000 years. So what do you do with a mind like this? Not fight it. You cannot delete a system this old. But you can stop worshiping the carrot once you see the string. The point was never to reach a place where wanting stops, because that place does not exist, and it was never supposed to. Because the treadmill is not a curse. It is the reason anyone is here to feel it. Your ancestors were the ones who never sat fully still, who always reached for a little more. The same restlessness that dims your new phone in a week is the engine that built cities, medicine, music, and you. It was never meant to hand you a final, permanent glow. So the next time the thing you wanted goes quiet, do not read it as failure. Nothing broke. Your mind simply did what it has always done, took the new normal, and turned to look at the horizon again. Chase the goals that quietly make your whole life steadier. Health, people, meaning, calm, not just the ones that shine in your imagination. The satisfaction was never the point. The motion was, and the motion is what carried us the whole way here.